Hey everybody, back at the collection again. Let's talk about some movies. Flight of the Phoenix. This is just one of those great ensemble character movies in the spirit of The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, Bridge on the River Kwai. It's just a bunch of great character actors all playing off of each other. It's almost like a play. It's very theatrical in the way that it's presented. This is one of my all-time favorite rainy day movies. The basic premise is it's a plane full of guys flying across the Sahara. The plane goes down and they're stuck in the desert, no escape, no way out, and they got to survive against the elements, the locals, their own dwindling sanity, until brilliantly they hatch a scheme to build a new airplane out of their wrecked one. People stuck in a situation trying to work their way to get out of it. And every time you think like, oh, this is it, they're gonna be saved, something's good's gonna happen, something inevitably shows up to just like squash them. The real core of the movie for me is the feud and the tension between Jimmy Stewart, who plays the pilot of the plane, and Hardy Kruger, who plays Dorfman. Dorfman is maybe one of my favorite characters in a movie ever. Hardy Kruger, who is just electric in this film, just makes this guy so deliciously evil. But you come to learn throughout the events of the film that he is the smartest, most capable person there, and the key to these guys' salvation out of this dire situation. And the tension between him and Jimmy Stewart is just delightful. You also have an amazing supporting cast of characters. You've got Ernest Borgnine, Richard Attenborough, Peter Finch. I won't go into spoilers here, but there's a twist that happens. One of my favorite scenes in the film, Richard Attenborough has this great moment where he completely loses his mind. Between the score and his performance, it's just so beautifully devastating. Flight of the Phoenix is fantastic. They did a remake of it with Dennis Quaid and Giovanni Ribisi. It's not terrible, but if you had to pick one, go for the original. That's my advice. Career opportunities. I'm not a huge John Hughes fan, personally. I like a lot of his movies. I haven't seen all of them, but he's one of those filmmakers who has written more things than he's directed. So there are a lot of movies out there that are considered John Hughes movies that he wasn't actually the helming behind, but he did write the script. And generally those films slot really well into the canon of his overall movie universe. And Career Opportunities is definitely one of those. This movie is essentially what would happen if you took Molly Ringwald's character from The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller, and after those characters finished high school, they just stayed in their hometown and didn't do anything. Frank Wally's character is very much a reflection of a Ferris Bueller type character who was so cool and so hip and so with it in high school, but eventually everybody grew out of that and moved on, and he got left behind, and everybody just thinks he's full of shit now. And he doesn't have the charm and charisma that he did when he was in a high school setting. And I think it's a great look at people like that. What do they do when they're not a kid anymore and they have to become an adult, but they just refuse to do that? The movie is set in a Target. Frank Wally's character gets a job as the nighttime cleanup guy. The whole movie takes place just in the span of that one night as he is locked inside the store, goofing around, and he discovers that Jennifer Connelly, who he knew from high school, is also hiding out in the Target. And the two of them meet, kind of rekindle a friendship, a bit of a romance that never happened. And it's similar to Breakfast Club in that it's set in one location and it's just a series of conversations that all kind of culminate into some hijinks in the third act. But less like Breakfast Club, it's not really relying on classic character archetypes. It's just kind of a meandering story of these two people who can't really grow up and end up finding what they need in each other. So it's kind of classically romantic that way. It's one of those movies where you think you kind of know where it's going, but it continues to subvert your expectations. And I feel like that's rare to find in a comedy, and certainly a comedy from the early 90s as well. I know John Hughes didn't direct it, but I would consider this my favorite John Hughes movie. So, oh geez. Career opportunities. Ronin. I love Ronin. Oh my God. If I had to make a top 10 action films, this would be top 5 for me. I think Ronin contains the best car chases that have ever been put to cinema. Just for my personal taste. That's not to say that other movies didn't do it better, and it's John Frankenheimer. I mean, you can't go wrong. The setup of Ronin, it's a bunch of mercenaries in France who have been hired to do a simple job. They need to steal a briefcase, and they've been hired by a mysterious kind of cloak and dagger organization that you get hints of who they are throughout the film. It's such a simple premise and a great set piece to just let some really talented actors do some great character work. One of my favorite types of movies is where you as the audience are dropped right into the middle of the story and just kind of have to piece things together based off of clues, but they don't spoon feed you exactly like this person is this kind of character and they came from this background and this is why they're doing what they're doing. I love a movie where those story elements come organically and it allows for a lot of twists and turns that you might not see coming right away. It's a very stylish film. For a long time watching this movie, I kind of thought that the movie would have worked better if Robert De Niro hadn't been cast in the lead. And this was late 90s Robert De Niro, where he was making a lot of interesting choices that I think audiences were confused by. He's not who you would think of to be the leading man in a car chase, shoot 'em up action film. The older I've gotten, the more I kind of appreciate him being cast against type in this role. I think it lands a gravitas to the film that wouldn't normally be there. There's something that is gained about an older actor playing an action hero, and going along with that, you get this wonderful friendship between him and Jean Reno. And their friendship is definitely the heart of the movie for me. There's a scene early on in the film where they're going to get some supplies for the heist, and the main characters are feeling kind of sketched out about and not wanting to do it. And Sean Bean has this great line where he just wants to get it over with, and he says,
"Okay, let's just do it. Let's just do it and be done, yeah?"
And that's a line that I say to myself all the time. Anytime you don't want to go to the store to buy groceries, or I have a social engagement that I don't feel up to, that's the line that always rings in my head, is just, let's just do it and be done and move on and it'll be great. This is one of those movies that I first discovered on cable. Anytime it was on, I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm watching Ronin now. So just so much fun. And again, some of the best car chases ever put to celluloid. Nothing, in my opinion, will ever come close to the car chases of Ronin. The Plague Dogs. Based on a book by Richard Adams, who wrote Watership Down, I believe, and directed and produced by the same animation team that did Watership Down. It's a hard watch, I'm not gonna lie. It is essentially the story of two dogs who escape from a lab that they've been tested on and retreat into the wild to be feral animals again and have a normal life. However, the lab they escaped from was doing research on bacterial infections and the plague. And so the government fear that the dogs may in fact have contracted the plague and spend all of their resources to hunt down the dogs to kill them. Doesn't that sound like a fun time to watch a movie? However, in spite of that really intense premise for a film, it is an absolutely beautiful movie. It is heartbreaking, it is honest. In terms of 2D hand-drawn animated films, it is one of the best expressions of that art form and that way of storytelling. You've probably never seen an animated film that looks like this. You've got incredible voice acting work from John Hurt, Christopher Benjamin. Like I said, it's a difficult watch. It's not something I would throw on every day. The great thing about movies is you can be entertained, you can be scared, you can laugh, and you can cry. And sometimes you need a cry when you're watching films. And I think The Plague Dogs is a great way to feel through cinema. And that's not to say it's all just an unrelenting, unforgiving, sad film. There are moments of joy and moments of hope and beauty in it. And really it's a film about characters living under oppression, trying to be free and trying to discover what freedom is and how it can exist and how one can move past trauma and the difficult things that have happened in their lives, and told brilliantly from the perspective of animals who aren't going to have the same sensibility or concepts of society and industry that the way that humans will. So it's an exploration of the idea of returning kind of back to nature, back to your more feral instincts, and how to use that to ground yourself kind of in time and in the present. It's beautiful, and I've seen it maybe only 2 or 3 times in my life, but every now and then you got to put on The Plague Dogs and have a good cry. Plague Dogs, not for the faint of heart. Suture. I wanted to close out just with another blind buy from Arrow Video. Arrow Video is another great boutique film label. A bit on the pricier side, but you won't spend more than you would on, say, a Criterion, for example. But again, a very eclectic catalog of films. Some classics, some you certainly heard of, but some you may have never heard of. And this, for me, was one of those films where I had never heard of it, and I thought, well, just based off of that poster alone, how could I not see what this movie is all about? And it's in black and white, and obviously you can tell I like black and white. Suture is a neo-noir film. It's a film that asks the audience to suspend their disbelief in a very specific way. It posits to the audience an idea that you have to buy into, and if you don't buy into this idea, then the movie does not work at all. It's a very bold choice. And the idea is, in the reality of this film, there are 2 actors, Michael Harris and Dennis Haysbert. They play half-brothers whose father has recently died, and they are reunited to kind of meet each other for the first time. And within the reality of this film, all the other periphery characters, Dennis Haysbert and Michael Harris, look virtually identical. Now, obviously, in our reality, and outside of the confines of this movie, one is a white man, one is a black man. However, in the reality of this film, they are virtually indistinguishable from each other. And that plays into the plot of the film, which is a classic noir in the vein of Dark Passage or North by Northwest, where it's a case of mistaken identity and somebody assuming somebody else's identity to cover their tracks for something heinous that they've done. But the way they decided to do that forces you as an audience member to A, buy into that, and then to start to question, well, if that's the reality within this film, then why in our own reality, in real life, do we see any difference between anybody at all? And it asks that question of the audience, not in a pretentious, preachy kind of way. It's very much just, here's an idea, let's run with it, and then, watch this film. When it's over, have a conversation with whoever you're watching it with, and you're like, you know what? It's a really interesting idea. And I love movies that do that. It's borderline experimental in that regard, but That's the thing about movies, is movies can do anything, and they can ask questions like that, and they can challenge you as an audience, as a spectator. Sometimes it's important to be challenged by a film that way. And like I said, not in a pretentious way, just in a curious kind of way. Even taking that element out, it's just a cool movie. It's shot beautifully. It's exactly what you would want out of film noir and out of the neo-noir genre. And you really do start to feel like these guys could be the same person by the end of it. It's a magic trick. So, Suture is a good time. I kind of jumped all over the place in this one, but that's really the way that I've been consuming movies lately, is just kind of sampling a little bit of everything. And I think that's the best way to enjoy and experience films. Don't limit yourself to just one type of movie. Don't limit yourself to just a joyous movie. Watch a sad movie, then watch a happy movie, then watch a silly movie, then watch a scary movie. You can't really go wrong. So, as always, watch more movies.